Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. I do think I might actually change the intro pretty soon. I think I'm going to probably change it to something about the TR because I think it's probably more focused. I don't know. I'm going to have to think about it. That's going to be really weird if I do change it. But everything's changing now. No, I'm just kidding. Let go of everything. Everything's falling away. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to freak anybody out. I do feel like that's kind of the spiritual vibes these days. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into this. Speaking of everything falling away, let's look at some completely useless platitudes. Let's look at how the toxic ritualistic, aka EFOB letter D. In this, we're looking at a lot of false recovery stuff, but let's look at how they use emotion to manipulate and to reinforce. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and break it down. This is one that I saw. Virgie Tovar follows this account. And this is what I saw that made me feel like, okay, I need to start reacting to some of these. Plus, I recently reacted to one with Angelica. So that should be up soon. Just saying. So this is a little bit Angelica inspired. But we're going to go ahead and go through a couple or a few of these posts on this account. So this says, food addiction, no. I felt addicted to the idea of thinness. So what is your first emotion when you hear that? Do you feel the, oh my gosh, oh, wow. If you don't, then you're a normal person. If you do feel it, then be aware that that's DIS ordered. So I've told you guys so many times that the word addiction is a coded word within the TR. It's a word that is used to manipulate. It's used to deflect from the actual problem. So if we were to replace the word addiction with obsession, then this would suddenly become accurate. But when it's addiction, then it frames it in such a way that your body is somehow contributing to your DIS order, which is not true. The body does not. The body adapts to the horrible things that you are doing to it. So remember, the body is following your mind, not the other way around, which is very, very important. And that is one of the pillars of the TR, the idea that your body is totally out of control, right? It's this insane force of nature that it magically upsizes or downsizes, all that kind of stuff. No. Everything with the body is cyclical for the most part. Things like circadian rhythms, seasonal rhythms, that's all very biological. Now, if you do have some kind of disorder that's physical, then that's a different story. Obviously, there's something abnormal there. If there's like a genetic disorder, something like that, there's something abnormal, right? If there's some kind of physical trauma, blah, 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 you get what I'm saying. But we're talking specifically about consumption and about size, okay? I have to keep this focused, but I have to say that because people in the TR, they're going to be like, well, what about this? And what about that? And I have to think of all these other things that you're wrong about, Alex. You're wrong about this. You're wrong about that. No, 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 no. No, I acknowledge it, but let's not conflate it with everything else, which is another TR strategy. Okay. So again, the idea of this is to give you the subliminal message that your body is the cause of your problem rather than the psychology or the approach to the trauma that you went through, which is basically what the actual cause is. The approach to coping with the extreme stress or traumatic experience, or both, that you went through that led a person to the TR. That's ultimately where it comes from. And through that, there was an obsession with how you looked in regard to size specifically. And that obsession became a game in playing with the actual control that you do have over it, even though you tell everybody else that you don't. But I'm going to call bullshit. Okay? That's what it actually is. And if you say that, then it does upset people because you're actually touching on the real issue. It's a game. It's a very toxic, deadly game that you play with yourself. And it's all just a distraction, essentially. It's a distraction from real issues. It's a distraction from real solutions. It's a distraction from making bigger changes to your life that you probably need to make, which can be scary. But more than anything, it's fear. It's fear-based. But this whole post is a way to keep you in that. Okay, so remember, this person is trying to subconsciously put you in a position where your body is the enemy. Okay? That's what that does. Because addiction it's a physical thing. All right, let's read the caption here. It was all that thinness represented that made my brain hum. Success, control, beauty, enoughness, ease, tenacity. That was the pull. Various levels of thinness never actually made my life better, nor did they even feel good, apart from the isolated thrill of seeing a number decrease. But that promise that maybe just the right LB would be transformative, that kept me in the cycle. Okay, so let's think about that. I'm going to put myself over these hashtags, even though it's probably way too late. But anyways, I don't care. So, this is a big trap within the TR. So the glorification of thinness. We don't talk about that enough. We often talk about the glorification of obesity, which is also very real. But there's also the glorification of thinness. So what is the issue with that? The issue is we need to stay in reality. There's no glory in thinness. There's no glory in fatness. There's just being an average weight, being thin is healthier. That's all. Being healthier doesn't give you riz, it doesn't give you money, it doesn't give you a good job, it doesn't, these are all other efforts that have nothing to do with consumption. Other than if your consumption is leading you to a point, or your manipulation of your consumption is leading you to a point where your health is collapsing due to self-destructive habits, But when you stop, then you still have to do all the other work. I still have to do my work as an activist. I still have to work on, my romantic aspiration. I still have to connect with others, keep my social connections alive. I still have to deal with family drama. I still have to focus on money and consider money every day or all the time or whatever. I still have to be an adult. I still have to keep everything running, regardless of if I'm thin or not. So there is this fantasy within thinness of a lot of people in the TR that is not reality. And so if you get there and then you see that it's not what you thought it would be, that can be a pressure or a risk factor to upsize or to backtrack or backslide. You're setting yourself up for failure. when you do that. So I want you to think about thinness as this. If you are struggling, or if you know somebody who's struggling, tell them this. Thinness is simply normality. It's normalcy. It's being within the norm, which as human beings, biologically, like any other animal in the entire planet, any other living being, basically, I mean, we have a healthy weight range. We do. You know, I guess we could be super specific if you want to be. We can talk about being a mammal. You know, we can go on that level, but every single mammal has a healthy weight range. Human beings are no different. So when you're in that normal range, you are healthier. That's it. That's basically it. If people don't like you when you're fat, they may still not like you when you're thin. If you're boring when you're fat, you're probably still going to be boring when you're thin. If you're poor, you're probably still going to be poor. I mean, that's the real tea, sis. That's the reality of it. There is this TR false connection that everything in your life revolves around consumption, and it revolves around what you do with that. But that's a psychological delusion. It's not true. The vast majority of the time, your relationships with others will have to do with how you treat people. Not something a lot of people don't want to hear. In TR, they don't want to hear it. But it does. It's the vast majority of it. It's having a more normal psychological profile in the sense that you're not hyper obsessed with how you look all the time. You're not hyper obsessed about what other people are doing. You just don't think about it as much. It doesn't come up as much, and it's not a big deal. And therefore, you lose that barrier to social interaction, which is great. You're also not constantly saying delusional things about it that are jarring to other people. It's very awkward. You're not telling your friends that you went to the doctor and you didn't want to hear about your weight at all. And your friend doesn't have to act like that's normal. Like, that's a barrier. It's odd to people. And people will say, oh, like, it doesn't matter. Da, da, da. It's like, but is this really worth it? You know? Because it can change. And I think, I know I'm kind of going on a diatribe about this, but it's important to ask yourself that question. Like, is it really that important to you that you identify with this issue so much that it would upset you to know that you'll have an easier time getting along with people if you're not going to tell them a story about how you didn't want to be weighed at the doctor? Because people will say to your face, they'll be like, oh, of course not. But in the back of their minds, they're like, oh my gosh, this person's delulu. I'm just telling you, and it does give you a barrier to other people, which a lot of times people within the TR, they want that. It's like, I want to say something weird, because I do think there's some avoidance in that too, where it's like, I want to say something bizarre to keep people kind of at a distance or on their toes around me, which I don't think is healthy. I think it's really sad if that's and I understand some of these things can be subconscious, but I think it's common. I think it's a common motivation too. So it's like, let's normalize getting through the trauma or healing from the trauma as much as we can, actually healing. Let's normalize not using all this as a way to distract from real issues. Can we do that? Can we actually heal? Because if you stop all this, like if this person wasn't sitting here drawing this out and all that, they'd have to actually deal with the problems they have because the distraction's gone. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, so here's another one. This one says, a big part of recovery is a willingness to think differently about your body. So this is actually a true statement. But what people don't understand, and what I did say from the beginning on this channel, which has proven to be quite successful, might I add, is that a big part of recovery is a willingness to stop thinking about your body, period. Which is very different for somebody in the TR. I think even just pointing out the constant rumination about it is something that is hardly ever challenged, and certainly not challenged in these spaces. It's never challenged. But let me ask the question, why do you think about it so much? Your body doesn't change that much day by day. So why do you feel the need to think about it every hour, every second, every minute? Is something going to change? And it's like, oh, like really think about it. Because when you do that, when you think about your body that often, that's dangerous. Like, I will tell you it is. If you think about like a show or something that often, it's not dangerous. I mean, it can be cringy to people, but hey, you can find a fandom, Go join the Disney adults, the Swifties, go join whatever. You can think about Disney every minute. It's not going to do anything to you. But if you think about your body every minute, those thoughts can translate into action. Put to you that way. And then you have a problem. Okay? Let's read this caption. Most of what we have been taught about our bodies or conditioned to believe disconnects us from the lived experience of being within our bodies. We have become self-voyeurs, fixated on curating and controlling our bodies so that they and we are acceptable. Recovery invites us to disentangle ourselves from those toxic messages. It's going to feel like we are a fish out of water, but it's exhilarating and freeing. You are so not alone. Reading can be extremely helpful. I loved You Have the Right to Remain Fat by Virgie Tovar. What are some of your favorite reads? Okay. So let's break it down. So again, this is just very, very emotional language. And I don't know if a lot of people are equipped. Some of you guys are. Obviously, if the TR has never appealed to you, you're going to be like, what the fuck? But some of us that have struggled with it, it's like, it's hard for us to be critical of emotions or critical of very feeling-based statements like this. So let's break it down because I think it's important to engage with it. This can be the difference between success and failure. Okay, so let's break it down. Most of what we have been taught about our bodies or conditioned to believe disconnects us from the lived experience of being within our bodies. So this takes the responsibility away from ourselves. Taught about our bodies or conditioned to believe, that tells you that somebody else forced you to have this problem. You can be set up for this problem, but at the end of the day, especially as an adult, you're choosing it every day. It's your choice. You're choosing to be in it. It's something that you programmed yourself to do. So it's a way to shift accountability away from yourself. Society made me this way. No, you did. Society, by and large, does not encourage the toxic ritualistic. No. People within it do, but society does not. Not general society, no. Maybe it could have been encouraged in a family. So maybe you could bring it down to the family level, but regardless, if you're an adult, you're still choosing it. We have the option to change any day, every day, right now. So I understand I went into it when I was very young. I think it started for me around 10 years old. I was primed for it. I was traumatized, and I took to it. I can only blame myself so much for going into it when I was so young, because especially if you were very young when you went into it, like, we don't have a lot of control in our lives at that age. But a lot of people fall into it or get into it in their teens, and still it's, a little bit of a tumultuous period. But we're not teenagers anymore. I'm not 9 years old anymore. We have options. We have choices. We have adult decisions to make. And one of them is if we're going to get out of this or not. And as soon as you're aware of it, you can choose to get out, even if you're young. Okay? And you chose not to. So that's the first step. It's throwing accountability off of yourself. That's what she's doing there. We have become self-voyeurs, fixated on curating and controlling our bodies so that they and we are acceptable. So that's true. In terms of the TR, this does occur. So we are fixated. We observe our body rather than be present in it. We dissociate. We create a massive gap in the mind-body connection. That's all true. But again, we do that to ourselves. Okay? So that's a true statement. So I think it's there to provide validity to somebody who's in the TR. They'll read that and be like, yes, I have become that way. Yes. But what's the solution? You stop. But see, look at what she says. Recovery invites us to disentangle ourselves from those toxic messages. So it's about the messages. It's not about the fixation. It's about the messages. No, it's not going to save you. If you focus solely on the message and not the fixation, then all you're going to do is shift along the TR spectrum. You're going to go to a different one. That can happen either way. And it's actually quite common, which means you don't get out of the issue because you're still fixated. So you just shift around some of the behaviors. It's going to feel like we are fish out of water, but it's exhilarating and freeing. So I wonder if she's talking about switching to a different one there. Because when you're not switching to a different one, it's not necessarily exhilarating and freeing. It's tortured. You feel crazy. Let me drop some truth bombs here, okay? Waking up to reality from the TR, especially at a severe level, it's painful. It's a lot of anhedonia, depression, regret. guilt over what we've done to ourselves. It's a lot of mourning over wasted time. It's a lot of waking up to the reality of our lives, right? So if we've spent so much time numbing ourselves, there can be a lot of things in our life that we are just horrified by. You could just, it's that like, but you have to just move forward, because it's okay if it doesn't feel exhilarating and freeing. It's okay if it's terrifying. That's normal. But it's worth it. I promise you. Because in reality, you're just as terrified being in it. Especially as your health collapses and as relationships suffer, as you lose your brain cells, like you lose your brain capacity through what you're doing. That's scary too. So it's kind of like, it's better to have that fear leaving than the fear of being in it. And as I told you guys, I'm a big fan of a crash out. If you just have a huge anxiety attack, just howl at the moon, scream. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but I know it's so scary to people in the TR. They're like, I don't want to sound crazy. I don't want to be crazy. Oh my God. You already are. So just, it's okay. You know, you just want to make your crazy something that's not dangerous, you know. But you find ways. You have to carve those pathways in your brain. You find ways, you forge a new path in your mind of how to deal with this anxiety. And so it doesn't actually feel great. But once you're done, you're done. You know, once you see what you're doing, you have to stop, even if it's painful or scary. You lean into the fear, you know, and people don't, it's not a popular message, but it's the truth. I'm not going to tell you that it's sunshine and rainbows. What I will tell you is after that, it is sunshine and rainbows for the most part, or it's kind of like a discovery of self. It's a discovery of a lot of things. There's so much about your life, about your understanding of the world, about who you are, about your relationships that you're missing out on because this is taking up so much bandwidth. So if you leave, then life opens up, but it starts out fearful or nervous. And that's okay. But what's not okay is to stay in it. All right, let's do one more. Okay, so here is the last one we're going to be covering. I'm trying to cover up those hashtags. I'm sorry. This one is liked by Virgie Tovar. So, stop idealizing recovered and thin. So, what does this mean? What emotional response does this elicit? It elicits this, oh, wow, I never thought about that. Wow, maybe I should open my mind. What it means is, let's not consider the physical aspect of recovery. Let's not consider weight normalization to be a part of recovery. But if it is, if somebody is not doing enough, isn't it for somebody who's doing too much? Your body can't function as well if you're not at a normal weight, if you're not within a normal, healthy weight range. Your hormones are still going to be messed up regardless of if you're over or under. You're going to have mood issues regardless of if you're over and under. You're going to have a lot of problems regardless. So, although ceasing the behaviors is extremely important for recovery, Weight normalization is the step to full recovery. And being able to reach that and sustain that, it is physical evidence of recovery. It is the end result of recovery. So it's not an idealization, it's acceptance that to reach a normal weight range after recovery is recovery, period. It's evidence of recovery. Okay? If you can't, then it means there's probably still something going on. So, let's read the little message. Putting constraints on my imagined recovery experience set me up for a lot of anguish. I've learned that so much of recovery is around expanding my vision of what is acceptable so that it can actually encompass my entire self. The longer I have stayed in recovery, the more I have needed to come to terms with living in a changing body. Hint, we all live in bodies that change. Permitting my body to change and shift from what for a period felt like my normal is exactly what has allowed me to focus on living and stay in recovery. Okay. So, I think that this is a big part of recovery for sure, but again, that has to do with weight normalization. So you have to permit your body to change, right? You have to permit your body to change to a normal weight. This can be really difficult for people on either side of the extreme of the toxic ritualistic, maybe any of them really. But you have to be within that normal weight range, or you're not recovered. No excuses here. Absolutely not. Putting constraints on my imagined recovery experience set me up for a lot of anguish. Sure it did, because it would mean you'd have to actually recover, which that's the one thing you don't want to do when you're in it. Which that's what she's encouraging people. She's saying don't recover. It was giving me anxiety to actually recover. Yeah, It's normal. It's a normal experience. If you have a issue with coping with anxiety, when you stop that toxic ritualistic behavior, you're going to have anxiety. Okay, so she's basically telling somebody in the TR that if you feel anxiety, you're not recovering, which is absolutely wrong. She's dead wrong. But again, if we have to feel the anxiety, that means we have to actually recover, right? Or if we have to actually recover, that means we have to feel the anxiety. So if she can skirt that, then she can skirt recovery in order to prevent herself from feeling anxious. So she says anguish, I say anxiety. That's basically what she's saying. I've learned that so much of recovery is around expanding my vision of what is acceptable so that it can actually encompass my entire self. This doesn't work on either end. If you're over or under, it doesn't work. Rejected. Very stupid. I think a lot of us in the TR, we really spend a lot of time expanding what's acceptable for us to put ourselves through. And let me be so honest. Being an extremely abnormal weight is putting yourself through something. It's putting yourself through a lot of pain. Either way, it's the reality of it. So sure, of course, the TR mind, yeah, we can make anything acceptable. Gosh, the masters of self-gaslighting. Of course. Does that mean that we should, though? No, it doesn't. Absolutely not. And the rest is like a false recovery. The longer I've stayed in recovery, the more I've needed to come to terms with living in a changing body. That's a true statement, but underneath all that other stuff, it's, it's, again, one of those things that she writes there just to give more credibility to what she's saying to somebody in it, because somebody in the TR does need to hear that. I need to be okay with my body changing to a normal weight, which a lot of my struggles and a lot of struggles on the channel, they've had to do with accepting those aspects. That's why I've split it into eras and done those things, because it does help psychologically to understand and to orient yourself. Because when I went through each phase, I'd have a lot of anxiety over it. And so it was a way to kind of provide a map way out for somebody, because a lot of downsizing is psychological too, you know. So I made sure to talk about that. But you have to be okay. You have to be okay with your life changing. You have to be okay with your body shifting, for sure. That's true. That's a true statement. You have to be okay with an identity shift, because if your identity is your disorder, that's not okay. It's not even really who you are. You've lost yourself in that. So you can't think of it that way. Try to reframe it as, I'm not losing myself, I'm finding myself. I'm creating myself even. That's even better. That gives you more of a healthy control. I'm creating who I am each day. Very, very healthy mindset. Very healthy form of control for a person in the TR. You're creating a new life. You're creating. Try to think of it more positively, because it is positive. Even if it makes you feel scared, it's okay. But yeah, I think that's where I'm going to leave it today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I don't know what this was, but I just went with it. I will talk to you guys again soon. Have a good rest of your day, night, etc. Peace.